Part 99. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 981. Chapter 981 Secret Meeting. Su Tang's eyes flashed and he said like a broken jar, "I'll never get out of prison anyway, so what does it matter whether Li Rui hates me or not? It's better to let him follow you wholeheartedly and still have a way to survive." Xiaoling sneered, "You are reasonable. However, I forgot to tell you that Xiao Rui has followed me wholeheartedly. He now calls me mom and is very attached to me. As for you, I'm afraid that in a few years, when he grows up, I won't remember who you are at all." Her words were like nails hammered into Su Tang's heart. This not only robbed her man, but also took possession of her child. Even if she doesn't like that child, it's still her child. How could you casually accept your love rival as your mother? Su Tang wanted to rush forward and tear Xiaoling's face apart again, and her body was shaking even harder, almost going crazy. Xiaoling looked at her with disdain. After much thought, "You just came up with this value? What a disappointing waste." As she said that, she waved her hand and motioned for the bodyguard to push her away. "Madam," Su Tang was anxious. What should she do if she really doesn't have food to eat after she leaves? The only response she received was the empty sound in the corridor, and Xiaoling had already walked away under the bodyguards. Xiaoling returned home, had dinner with her family, and told her two children a bedtime story. She returned to her bedroom, took a shower, put on soft silk pajamas, and sat in front of the dressing table to apply skincare products. Li Lei had already finished washing and was wearing a silk nightgown. He walked behind her and gently combed her hair. "You went to see Su Tang today?" he asked while combing. Xiaoling was a little careless. She opened a bottle of body lotion and tried it before switching to another bottle. "Do you like rose or lavender scent?" "Rose," he replied. "Let me apply it for you." Xiaoling handed him the bottle of rose flavor. He poured some into his palm and gently applied it on the exposed white skin of her shoulders and neck. "You're so pretty," he said. Xiaoling smiled. Of course she looked in the mirror at the man who lowered his head slightly and was focusing on applying body lotion to himself. In fact, he is better looking. The soft bedroom lighting outlines his deep and facial features. The hair on his forehead is a bit long and covers his eyes, but he looks even more charming. She was mesmerized by what she saw. Such a good-looking man was her beloved husband. What else could she want in this life? He applied it very carefully, not sparing every inch of skin. His slightly rough palms were filled with body temperature, and he rubbed her smooth back little by little, letting the fragrance of roses penetrate into her body and quietly linger in the air. She relaxed unconsciously and heard his magnetic and confused voice asking, "What did you say to her?" "Su Tang." She half closed her eyes, like a lazy cat, almost humming when she felt comfortable. "I scolded her and let out a bad breath that I have had for so many years. Move to the right. Yes, this is it. Li Lei, you made a wise choice by marrying me, you know? Su Tang is at the end of his rope, and you still want to harm Xiao Rui. I've never seen her act like this." Li Lei first chuckled. "Yes, the wisest choice in my life is to pass 5 levels and kill 6 generals, and finally marry you." Then he asked with some confusion, "Why did Su Tang trick Xiao Rui?" Xiaoling said, "She wants to tell Xiao Rui the truth, that she is looking for a killer to hit us. You think Xiao Rui is just a child, how will he feel when he knows that his own mother wants to kill him? Maybe it will be in his heart for the rest of his life." Shadow. Su Tang is really willing to do anything to achieve his goal. Li Lei didn't expect it to be like this and was startled. Has that elegant woman changed, or has he never seen her clearly? He lowered his eyes, continued to apply rose milk on her carefully, and asked, "Then what did you answer?" "Of course I can't let her hurt Xiao Rui," Xiaoling said drowsily, feeling so comfortable that she was about to fall asleep. He said, "I refused." I don't want Xiao Rui to meet her again and face such a cruel truth. Li Lei's eyes were a little dark. Xiao Ling was much more concerned about Li Rui, a child with the wrong bloodline, than Su Tang, his biological mother. Putting aside love, she is also a more suitable candidate to be the matron of the house. Feeling more cherished for this girl in his heart, he picked her up and placed her on the soft down bed. She groaned and turned over, changing to a more comfortable position, hugging him like a large pillow. "Sleep with me," she coquettishly, rubbed against his muscular body a few times, and then fell into a deep sleep. Leaving Li Lei alone, she was very angry. However, looking at the sweet and peaceful sleeping face on the feather bed, he finally endured it again and did not eat her up. I spent a painful night holding this annoying little goblin in my arms. The next day, Li Lei went to the place where Su Tang was imprisoned without telling Xiaoling. Su Tang has not eaten for a day. He is so hungry that he looks haggard and his eyes have lost their original luster. When she saw Li Lei, she felt like she had seen a savior. She rushed forward and hugged his body. "Master! Master! I was wrong, please forgive me. Help me. I don't want to go to X prison." Li Lei took her off his body in a few seconds and frowned. "Su Tang, Xiao Ling doesn't like other women touching me. If you do this again, I will have to leave immediately." Su Tang felt pain in his heart, but he still resisted from rushing forward and looked at him, tears streaming down his face. "Young master," she said while crying, "I really know that I was wrong. I was just obsessed for a moment. It's all because I love you so much. Su Tang, I have told you long ago that it is impossible for us to be together, and now you are the result of your stubbornness." There was unbearable deepness in Li Lei's eyes, but his words were very ruthless. "I don't behave like this now. In the past, I was no longer alone. I had a wife and a son, and I was responsible for their personal safety. I had no choice but to send you to X prison. Su Tang, please take care of yourself." Su Tang's tears fell slowly. "No. Master, you won't be so cruel. It must be Yesin Ling. She must be the instigator, right? It must be her idea to send me to X prison." "It was my idea," Li Lei said. "It was her idea. You don't have to cover up for her," Su Tang screamed. Li Lei looked at her with pity. "Su Tang, stop fooling yourself and others. You know very well, how could Xiao Ling know about X prison? I made this decision because I didn't want you to hurt her again." Su Tang looked at him in disbelief, her tears breaking like a dam. Suddenly, she screamed again, "Why are you so cruel? Why don't you just kill me? Why?" End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 982. Chapter 982. There is only one mother. Li Lei was silent. But the deep eyes clearly told her that because she was kind to him, he couldn't bear it. "You can't bear it, right? Ha ha ha," Su Tang cried and laughed, stretching out a bony hand and pointing straight at him. "Li Lei, there are times when you can't bear it. You're like this, why not just kill me? Come on, kill me," she yelled and rushed towards him, holding his hand and hitting herself. "Kill me, kill me. Me." He grabbed her hand easily and watched her vent in silence until she cried hoarsely and collapsed on the cold cement floor. Su Tang covered his face and cried desperately, "You are not even willing to kill me." Li Lei then spoke, "Death? If you die here, you will always be a loser. It is better to live. Maybe there is hope for a comeback in the future. This is the Su Tang I know." "A comeback?" He said. "Comeback?" Su Tang raised his head in excitement, forgetting to cry, staring into his eyes, and asked eagerly, "Will you still love me? Will you fall in love with me in the future?" No, her answer was two decisive words. "Then what's the hope of a comeback?" Maybe you'll get back at me by falling in love with someone else, someone better than me. Sutang heard this and laughed crazily, laughing and crying again. This man still doesn't understand her. How could she fall in love with someone else? Lilei, tell me, she looked at him sarcastically, what is the real purpose of your coming here? Isn't it just to visit me? Lilei actually didn't want to come see her. He felt sad that his old friend who had fought alongside her had reached this point. However, what Xiaoling said to him before going to bed yesterday reminded him that some things have been done, so it is better to do them more safely. When Xiaoling came to see you yesterday, you made a good suggestion, but unfortunately she rejected it. I came here to hope that you can implement that suggestion. In return, I will give you some advice in the days before you enter X prison. Your best care, Lilei said. He had already heard from his subordinates that Xiaoling did not give Sutang food yesterday. Looking at Sutang's hungry and haggard appearance, he also sighed in his heart. How did he get to such a situation step by step? Sutang was startled, but as smart as she was, she quickly understood. You want Xiaorui to hate me and make him follow Yasin Ling even more wholeheartedly. Lilei, you are so cruel. Li Rui is my son. From the moment you tried to kill him, he was no longer there. Lilei's voice became cold and hard. That's right, he just wanted Li Rui to see the true face of his biological mother. So what if the child would be harmed? It's better than Xiaoling working hard to raise him and then one day he suddenly rebels. Lilei is very cruel in some matters. He does not love the child as much as Xiaoling does. On the contrary, in order to make Xiaoling safer, he would rather hurt the child than to destroy the child's last thoughts of his biological mother. Since Xiaoling has raised Li Rui should regard her as his biological mother. Lilei looked at Sutang and said without any doubt, tell Xiaorui the truth about your intention to kill him. What if I say no? Sutang was unwilling to give in. How could he be so nice to that bitch? Then you will have no choice but to enter prison. Sutang shivered. Of course she knew that if she really went in like that, she would be lucky even if she died. She looked at Lilei and saw no room for maneuver in his calm eyes. She finally gritted her teeth and said, yes, I promise you. But you must also promise me a condition. Lilei raised his eyebrows slightly. Sutang begged in a low voice, Master, give me a photo of you and let me take it to the prison. That will be her only support in the long and dark time in the future. Lilei was surprised. He didn't expect such conditions, and he felt a little sad in his heart. How could such a reliable right-hand man end up like this? He nodded, okay, I'll ask someone to deliver it today. Thank you, she said softly. There was no more words between the two of them. Lilei opened the door of the prison cell and walked out. That evening, he brought Li Rui over and entered the room next to the prison cell as prepared. Through the one-way glass in that room, you can clearly see the situation inside the prison cell, but you cannot see the situation on the other side of the glass from the prison cell side. Li Rui was a little nervous when he saw his mother, and grabbed Lilei's hand. Lilei looked down at him and said in a gentle voice, afraid. Li Rui shook his head, nodded again, shrank behind him, and then said, I'm afraid she'll hit me again. She can't see you now, and she doesn't know you're coming. Lilei comforted the child and took him to sit on the small bench. What he was about to hear might scar him for the rest of his life, but there were no perfect choices. Xiaorui, Lilei said to the child gently but firmly, you are a man, you must be brave. Some things may be cruel, but this is how a man grows up, you know. The child nodded in understanding. Lilei sighed in his heart and sat down with him. His hand gently held the child's hand, as if to give the child strength. In the prison cell over there, an interrogator walked in and talked to Sutang, asking her to tell the truth. Li Rui heard this clearly and his eyes widened in disbelief. Why, it wasn't enough that her mother almost beat him to death last time. She also deliberately wanted to kill him, brother Xiaowei, and Xiaoling's mother this time. The child's heart was shaken, and unknowingly, tears filled his cheeks. I don't know how long it took before the interrogation ended. Li Rui's hands and feet were cold after learning all the truth, and he was too sad to make a sound. Li Lei took off his coat and put it on the child, then carried him into the car. The air conditioner in the car is as warm as spring, the low and rhythmic engine roars, and the driver controls the steering wheel to merge into the city streets, which also makes the little child come back to his senses little by little. "She's not my mother," he murmured. Li Lei still hugged him. "She gave birth to you just to use you to get your father's love. She never really loved you. But it doesn't matter, Xiao Rui, your Xiaoling mother likes you very much and treats you as her own son. I love you all the same. You have a very good mother, so good that other children can be jealous." The child did not speak for a long time. When the car stopped at the door of his home, he said softly, "Mom won't harm me. I only have one mother." From an angle that he couldn't see, Li Lei smiled. He stretched out his hand to wipe away the child's tears. "Well, you only have one mother. Stop crying, and don't tell your mother where you went today, she will feel bad." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 983. Chapter 983. Xia Moyan takes action. Xiaoling is stretching her body in the practice room. Over the years, she has never failed in her basic skills of singing and dancing. Even on those days when she was taken away by the strong wind, she would close her eyes and silently simulate the scene of practicing in her mind. This not only makes her skills far beyond those of other celebrities, but also gives her peace of mind. Sunlight shines in through the floor-to-ceiling glass. A layer of hazy gold was plated on her body. She stretches her limbs, twists her waist, and spins, as gracefully and lightly as a cat. Mao lay lazily on the wooden floor by the window, looking at her half asleep. Its life has not been so boring since its master got married. There is a mistress in the territory who is very fragile, well, at least in the eyes of Mr. Mao, and there are two children who need to be taken care of. They are not like the master. Being able to take care of yourself, you need to worry about all the time. Mr. Mao deeply feels that he has a heavy responsibility. It looked at the dance of the hostess with boredom, and couldn't understand what the purpose of this kind of action that showed zero combat effectiveness at first glance. If Xiaoling's fans knew about it, they would be crying and lamenting that Mao had so much money and watched goddess Xiaoling practice her dance at close range. It actually feels boring. Xiaoling spins and spins again. Mr. Mao is about to fall asleep. Just when it was debating whether to go out and play with the cute young master Xiaowei, Li Lei walked in. He was wearing a very casual white shirt. Against his wheat-colored skin, he looked handsome and clean. He walked towards Xiaoling, with a hint of reproach in his doting tone. "Why are you practicing dancing now? Xiaoling, how long have you been taking off the cast? You didn't pay attention to protecting yourself, so be careful of getting hurt." She stopped her movements, turned around, and looked at him with a smile. "It's okay, don't worry. I've been practicing dancing all my life, don't I even have the sense of propriety? Besides, proper exercise helps with recovery." He glanced at the wheelchair that she had thrown in the corner of the practice room, and shook his head helplessly. It's true." He turned his head again, and seriously lectured the leopard by the window. "Xiaoling is messing around, and so are you. Are you following me? Why are you hiding here to look at beautiful women? Next time you find her not caring about her body, you have to tell me as soon as possible, you know." A certain leopard yawned loudly and was too lazy to pay attention to him. Xiaoling laughed out loud and asked him, "Have you finished all the affairs for today?" Lilei put his arms around her soft and slender waist and placed a kiss on her forehead. Yes. Can I fry salmon for you tonight? Before she could say anything, Mao flicked his tail happily. Xiaoling smiled and glanced at Mao. Okay. He asked him again, will Sutang be sent to X prison tomorrow? He nodded and did not tell her that he had taken Li Rui to find Sutang in private. He only said, X prison is heavily defended. Although it contains extremely vicious criminals, there has not been a single person in it for more than 200 years. If the jailbreak is successful, nothing like Li Feng will happen, don't worry. She nodded and felt relieved. I feel a little sad that the elegant and proud woman who was as fragrant as a flower when we first met has now ended up like this. She chatted softly with Lilei for a while, then went into the bathroom to take a shower, changed out of her sweat-stained dance clothes, called her brother, talked about the current situation at home, and talked about Lilei's love for Sutang. Disposal. Xiaomoyan pondered, X-prison. What's wrong, brother? It's nothing, Xiaomoyan said in a clear and calm voice, it's really a good idea. After winding up the thread, Xiaomoyan put on a pure white robe, took his magic weapon, and said to Chief Xia, Father, I am going on a long journey. The old man was playing chess with the silver fox at home. Hearing this, he waved his hand impatiently, Go, go, you brat won't play chess with me, and he will only think about making money and killing you all day long. The veins on Xiaomoyan's forehead twitched. What does it mean to kill someone for money? I'm going to help my sister deal with her love rival, he gritted his teeth and said. Your sister has the protection of that brat from the Li family. Why are you messing with her? Chief Xia complained very sadly. That brat from the Li family was nothing. When he was chasing his daughter, he said all the good things and even treated her diligently. Playing chess with me, but now the daughter has caught her, and he won't come to play chess with the old man. Xiaomoyan felt that she was so well educated that she didn't even look at her father with disdain in this situation. Which was more important, his old man's chess game, or his sister's lifelong happiness? That brat from the Li family is so ungrateful in doing things. Do you think everything will be fine if you send him to X prison? There, although 99% of the people live a miserable life, there is still a very small possibility of being called the king of the prison, calling the wind and rain, killing and taking everything, and living a more enjoyable life than in the outside world. He would not allow his sister's love rival to be so lucky. Ignoring his old man, the national preceptor floated away with his magic weapon. X prison. The warden was flattered and let Xiaomoyan into the room. He offered tea and gave up his seat. He was frightened and said, Master, the imperial preceptor. What kind of wind has brought you here? I will do whatever you tell me. Xiaomo said, you are going to send a prisoner tomorrow. His name is Sutang. Yes, yes, the warden said everything he knew. It is said that an unforgivable crime was committed within the Li family, your sister's family. The warden understood something, a stack of, he said in a loud voice, don't worry, I know how to deal with her, and I will definitely let her enjoy the top treatment here. Please rest assured, both you and Mrs. Li. Xiaomoyan's pure eyes had a hint of satisfaction. Bring me her prison uniform, he said. The warden didn't know what he was going to do, but he still obeyed and brought over the prison uniforms prepared for Sutang the next day. Xiaomoyan took the prison uniform, asked for a clean room, and went in with the magic weapon. One night later, he came out with the prison uniform, handed it back to the warden, and told her, she must wear this, remember. Yes, yes, the warden responded repeatedly. Xiaomoyan pushed another thing into his hand. I made a small spell on the prison uniform, which destroyed the balance of fortune in the prison. This amulet is for you, and it absorbs the excess that has been destroyed and overflowed. Good luck will ensure you a prosperous life. The warden took it excitedly, bursting into tears with gratitude, and thanked him profusely, wishing he could kowtow to Siamoyan. He knew that it would be beneficial to cooperate with the national master. Just give a piece of clothing to an insignificant prisoner to wear, and it can be exchanged for such a good thing. It is really worth it. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xiaoweiniang. Chapter 984. Chapter 984 Entering X Prison. As for Sutang and the fate of being destroyed in prison, he doesn't care. Anyway, those who enter X prison are all scum and trash, and they all deserve their fate no matter what. Siamoyan is also very satisfied. As a national advisor, he rarely uses his ability to do anything for his family, because it is easy to violate the laws of heaven and earth by forcefully getting involved in his family's fate. But Sutang's case is different. There is Lilei's punishment in front of him. He only made a small fortune bonus on Lilei's punishment. This kind of adjustment is still within the acceptable range of heaven's law. Although, he will do it for this. There is a price to pay, but nothing serious. It is really refreshing to be able to deal with my sister's love rival. The next day, Sutang arrived at X prison. Although she was mentally prepared, Sutang still felt humiliated and angry at the guards' rough treatment. They actually took off her clothes in front of everyone, mixed, in the middle, they roughly covered her with a prison uniform. The prison uniform had an unpleasant stench that made her nostrils feel vomiting. "Get out of here, you bitch," a fat jailer kicked her hard and kicked her down into a dark hole. She couldn't see her fingers in the cave, it was very steep, all the way down, she was barefoot, stepping on the rough soil and stones, and she didn't know how far she had walked, until her pampered feet all had blisters, and she finally managed to went to the exit. Roar. Before she could react, she heard a low growl from a beast and instinctively backed away. She saw a hungry wild dog staring at her with a pair of ghostly eyes. Her heartbeat was beating like a drum, and she had no weapons at hand. She watched helplessly as the wild dogs pounced on her, and the only thing she could do was to turn around and run away. I don't know how long she ran. Fortunately, the wild dog was too hungry and weak to keep up with her footsteps, and gradually disappeared. She stopped, not knowing where she ran. She looked around, surrounded by dark woods, and a blood-red crescent moon hung in the sky. Far and near, there were faint roars of wild beasts, occasionally mixed with the wanton laughter or screams of humans. It was so weird and creepy. Sutang panted and leaned under the tree, examining her body in the dim moonlight. Her feet had lost all feeling and she could not move a step. She didn't know how the feet were worn, and they were bleeding constantly. She tore them apart. He took off his clothes and bandaged them hastily, resisting the stench. Only then did he realize that his toes had been worn down to the point of revealing white bones. "This is your first day in prison, what should you do next?" While she was bandaging the wound, she felt sad about it, and her heart was filled with pain and despair. What she didn't know was that the only prison uniform given to her by the prison was stained with the bad luck enchanted by Siamoyan's spell. As long as she wore it for a day, her bad luck would never end. She cherished this only set of fabrics, not wasting any rags, and carefully placed them close to her body for future use. She had just finished bandaging her feet, and when she looked up, she suddenly saw several savage-like men and women smiling ferociously at her. "Newcomers," one of the big men licked his lips, "the goods this time look good, white, clean and fine. The skin is tender and the meat is tender, it seems we can have fun again, ha ha ha." Sutang was so frightened that he shivered. What did they want to do? I heard a dark and thin woman in the group sigh, "What's so good? After a while, after staying here for a long time, won't it become ugly and rough? I say you guys, don't worry about it all the time. At that time, it's important to complete the mission of the Great Ghost Witch as soon as possible. If we can't find the test subject, we have to find someone ourselves. A man was touching Sutang's face, and despite Sutang's weak dodge, he was dirty. His big palm was about to touch her cheek and into her breast. After listening to the woman's words, he grabbed her hard a few times, then reluctantly stopped, and cursed disappointment. He stood up, waved his hand, "Take this person away." Immediately two tall and thick men came forward and Sutang. A man kicked her, almost knocking her down. "Quickly move. Sutang's foot is injured. Where can he walk?" They were out of breath before taking a few steps, and the whole team had to stop. "Why are you so lazy?" The dark and skinny woman came up and gave her a slap in the face. "When you arrived in our world, you thought you were a wealthy lady. Leave quickly. If you don't leave, be careful. I'm going to stretch your muscles and peel off your skin right now. Before you peel off your skin, let your brothers feel refreshed first." Several men smiled obscenely. Sutang's face turned pale, knowing that resisting would only lead to more horrific insults, so he had no choice but to drag his injured body and grit his teeth and move forward. Despite this, the entire team was still slowed down by her. "Let's camp here today," a man said when he saw that she couldn't walk anymore. "Don't really tire this to death and send it to the big ghost witch. He won't accept her. Where can we find a replacement, people go?" The others heard that what he said made sense, so they set up camp cursing. A group of people lit up a bonfire and ate unknown wild fruits and barbecued meat while punching fists and joking. A few impatient ones hugged the women in the group and rolled away into the darkness. After a while, all kinds of unpleasant words were heard. The sound came out. Sutang tried her best to curl up into a ball and try her best to reduce her sense of presence. She knew very well that these people in front of her were all vicious criminals and there was no reason to explain. If she was not careful, she would be irreparably harmed. How to protect yourself? Her mind was spinning rapidly, trying to figure out what they meant by the big ghost witch. Just as he was thinking hard, suddenly, a man surrounded by animal skins came over. "You bitch, you look really good." He stretched out his hand to tear Sutang's clothes, spraying stench from his mouth and smiling obscenely. "Come here, let me enjoy it." Sutang was so frightened that she shrank back desperately. In desperation, she blurted out, "Brother, I will serve you well. Can you tell me what the great ghost witch is?" "Ha ha, you are wise." The man was very satisfied, and continued to tear her clothes apart while saying, "Big ghost witch? He is the supreme in X prison. It is your honor to be sent to him as an experimental subject, as long as you lie down on a big rock and have your brain cut open by him, or you can splice some animal tails and animal claws on your body, you can survive. You will have 3 meals a day. Even if you run out occasionally, others will recognize you as a big ghost witch. I don't dare to do anything to you, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. This kind of good thing is so enviable that people can't even envy it. How about it, bitch? Thank us for sending you to such a good place. Hurry up. Take good care of your uncle." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Sci-fi. Chapter 985. Chapter 985 The Great Ghost Witch. "Wait." Sutang's face turned pale and his voice changed. She put one hand on the man's chest, trying desperately to stop him. She finally understood that that big ghost witch was clearly a pervert. These people were helping him find a test subject, and that test subject was her. When she gets to the big ghost witch, she will face the same tragic fate as a white mouse, as this man said. She is not willing to give in. "You stinky bitch, why are you in such trouble?" The man got angry and slapped her twice, causing her cheeks to swell up. He didn't want to talk nonsense with her anymore, so he pushed her down and forced himself on her. "The big ghost witch can't spare you," Sutang screamed. "If you dare to touch me, when I become his experiment, I will definitely ask him to kill you." As long as I am a cooperative experiment, this trivial request of mine will be honored. She was betting on these people's fear of the big ghost witch. From what they said, it can be seen that the big ghost witch is a person that most people in this prison cannot afford to offend, and they are vaguely afraid of him. Sure enough, she made the right bet. The man stopped what he was about to do to violate her, and with a ferocious expression on his face, he slapped her twice in the face, grabbed her hair, and said viciously, "Who do you think you are? How dare you accuse me to a big ghost witch? What's going on? Do you think he will listen? I won't kill you. Don't you dare." Sutang calmed down now, looked into the man's eyes, and said, "Don't you dare kill me, because after you kill me, it will be difficult for you to find the experimental subjects." The one just now, what did the woman say? "If we can't find the experimental subject, we will choose one of you to give to the big ghost witch. Do you think they will choose someone else, or you who killed me?" She pressed hard and asked, causing the man's expression to change. This man really didn't dare to kill her, and the reason was exactly as she said. Who should he take for the spot if he killed her? Every group in prison. No one dares to offend the great ghost witch. "Even if I don't kill you, I will you." The man wrote a poem and wanted to tear her apart. Sutang said, "I have learned some medical skills, and there is no guarantee that I can talk to the big ghost witch. Even if it doesn't work, I can be a good experimental subject, please him, and ask him to punish those who have bullied me. Big, it would be as easy for the ghost witch to kill you as chopping melons and vegetables. If you are brave, you might as well give it a try." The man's expression changed again and again, and he endured it again and again, but did not continue to attack her. "Smelly bitch," he scolded fiercely. Sutang knew that he was safe for the time being and smiled, "Don't be so angry. If you can protect me and send me to the big ghost witch safely, I promise that I will ask him to give you a reward." "The great ghost witch's reward?" The man's eyes are shining. "That's a good thing. The gadgets such as white rice, penicillin, and lighters sent in by the jailers are basically concentrated in the hands of a few big forces, and the big ghost witch is one of them. If you just slip a little from your fingers, he can enjoy it for a long time." The man looked at the woman in front of him. He had seen many newcomers sent to prison, most of whom were lost and panicked. It was rare to find a woman as calm and organized as this woman. Maybe she could really persuade the great ghost witch to give him a reward. "Okay, I'll help you. Anyway, this woman is too dangerous to touch, so it's better to go along with the flow and do a favor. If he can really get a reward, his status in this small group will be higher." The two struck a deal. In the rest of the trip, the man really protected Sutang from being violated by others, even taking care of his diet and sleep. Although Sutang's life was a little easier, she was still scolded by others from time to time, especially the evil eyes of several other men who clung to her like snakes, which made her back feel cold. She felt that she was so unlucky. Why was she caught by this group of people just after entering prison? The stench from the prison uniform came in waves. Originally, she thought the prison uniform was too unclean, but after just a few days, she hated that the prison uniform was not smelly enough. She wished that it could stink as much as possible to stop those disgusting things. The man's approach. Her brain was not idle, and she was constantly looking for opportunities to escape, but the group of people guarded her too tightly, and she never found the opportunity. Finally, we arrived at the big ghost witch. That was an old man with a shriveled and ugly appearance, a crooked face with pits and pits, and his cheeks were covered with tumors, which made him want to vomit. The group of people were obviously afraid of him, and even their voices trembled when they spoke. "Master, great ghost witch, we have brought you the experimental product you asked for." The big ghost witch walked up to Sutang, stretched out two dry fingers to inspect her, and nodded with satisfaction. "Newcomers, you performed well this time. The new ones are much more interesting than the old bones in the prison. Thank you for the compliment, great ghost witch. Several people were ecstatic. The man who took care of Sutang along the way gave her a wink, asking her to mention the reward she had promised him before. Seeing that they were still not leaving, the big ghost witch frowned unhappily. Is there anything else? Sutang sneered, he wants me to ask you for the prize. The big ghost witch was a little surprised. This time the experimental subject was quite courageous. He was the first one who didn't cry and even dared to speak in front of him. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Sutang. Little girl, do you know who I am? I know, respected Lord Ghost Witch, Sutang said respectfully, not daring to offend this disgusting old pervert. After all, she didn't want to die. I have heard about your deeds and know that you will poach people alive. It's really creative to graft animal limbs onto human bodies. I have also learned some medical skills outside. It would be a great honor to be your assistant. Oh, the big ghost witch laughed playfully. It turned out that she was not afraid of death, but had this idea. This is a new life-saving method. The old ghost witch seemed to be in a good mood and asked, then tell me, what medical skills do you know? Not much, simple bullet debridement surgery, finger amputation surgery, etc. I have been on the battlefield before. It is not a problem to deal with some common trauma in the battlefield, but not the more difficult ones, she added respectfully. But great ghost witch, since I have followed you sincerely, I can learn the rest and I will definitely help you. The great ghost witch was a little dissatisfied when he heard that she only knew these things at first, but there were not many people in this prison who knew only these things, so it was better than nothing. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Sci-fi. Chapter 986. Chapter 986, Sutang's Fate. He stared at Sutang for a long time, which made Sutang feel chills running down his spine. Finally, he laughed strangely. You girl, you are lucky to catch up with me when I don't really want to kill people. There is no shortage of experimental products recently, and there is even a shortage of assistants. You can help me dissect the heads and dispose of the corpses. The ugly words are ahead. If I find out that you have any evil intentions, I will make you die in an ugly way. Sutang was overjoyed and burst into tears of gratitude. Thank you, great ghost witch. The people responsible for transporting her also smiled, secretly thinking that this girl was so lucky to be favored by the big ghost witch. One of them had the courage to ask, what about our reward? The big ghost witch frowned. He usually uses these people to transport things, so why should he give them any rewards? At this time, he looked at Sutang. Little girl, what did you promise them? Sutang's realization swept over those people and said to the big ghost witch, I promised that person dash. She pointed her finger at the man who negotiated terms with her. If I can reach you safely, I will intercede for him. Let's see if we can get any rewards, but I don't guarantee that things will be successful. Whether you give them a reward or not depends entirely on your will, Sutang said very respectfully. The man was anxious. The lines agreed upon in advance were not like this. Whether you give a reward or not is entirely up to you. Everyone is not stupid. Sutang made it clear that he doesn't want to honor the reward. The big ghost witch also understood what she meant, and couldn't help but burst out laughing. Interesting, interesting. The little girl has a good trick and makes a lot of money. I like it. In your opinion, how should we deal with them? Sutang's cold eyes swept over the group of people. I don't like them very much, and I beg the great ghost witch to use them as experimental subjects. I have just become your assistant, and I need to find some people to practice my skills with. Ha 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 ha. The big ghost witch laughed. This new little girl is so cruel and ruthless. He really likes her more and more. Okay, I'll do as you want. The faces of those people changed, they looked at each other, turned around and wanted to run away. The big ghost witch backhanded him and touched some mechanism. Suddenly, a super huge net was lifted up from under their feet, and all of them were caught in the net at once and hung on the tree. Great Ghost Witch, have mercy on me, Great Ghost Witch, have mercy on me. There was a sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling. The big ghost witch just smiled weirdly and looked at Sutang with a face covered with sarcoma. Little girl, are you satisfied now? These materials are prepared for you, do a good dissection and don't let me down. Sutang respectfully said yes. She had been bullied by those people along the way, and she had long suppressed anger in her heart. If she didn't torture them, she would be called Sutang in vain. In the next few days, under the supervision and guidance of her great ghost witch, these people were disemboweled, skinned, and cramped, and their brains were dug out alive. All kinds of methods were used. At first, her hands were shaking a little while listening to those people's screams and begging for mercy, but gradually she got used to it, and those miserable sounds were filtered by her into meaningless background sounds, which no longer affected her. Operation. The great ghost witch is very satisfied with this female assistant. Sutang was also very satisfied. She found that this weird old man had a high status in that he knew how to operate and treat difficult and complicated diseases. Moreover, he also cultivated poisons and made poisons. Not only did he threaten the lives of his enemies, he also sold drugs to many people. This intricate chain of interests allowed the big ghost witch to take root firmly in X prison. And she, as the only assistant of the big ghost witch, can walk sideways in the entire. Sutang gradually became more ambitious. If she continued like this, maybe one day she would become one of the supreme beings in the entire X prison, and then, break out of the prison and return to the Li family. She works hard every day for this secret dream. At night when she was sleeping, she would take out the photo Lilei gave her and look at it carefully. In the dim moonlight, she would touch Lilei's handsome cheek with her fingers. Lilei. She murmured the name of the lover in her dream. Wait until I come back. What are you looking at? Suddenly, the voice of a ghostly witch came from behind. Sutang was so frightened that she started to do something. Her heart was beating wildly. She didn't even notice when he came behind her. It was too late to take back Lilei's photo, so she had to say respectfully to the big ghost witch, I am missing an old friend. I think you are thinking about getting married. The big ghost witch exposed her mercilessly. Sutang blushed slightly, but did not refute. Show me the photo, the big ghost witch said, bending down to pick up the photo. He was shocked when he saw it. This is that little brat from the Li family. Say. What are you doing? Meet Lilei. Sutang's heart skipped a beat. From his tone, he seemed to have a bad impression of Lilei. She murmured, thinking about how to make up a lie to get rid of this matter, but the big ghost witch was spinning in circles, and suddenly touched her with his finger. I understand, you were sent by Lilei to lurk beside me. Years passed, and that little still didn't give up and planned to kill me. Look, I'll pull out his claws today. I don't want it, you big ghost witch, Sutang exclaimed in shock. She never expected that the backer she sought wholeheartedly turned out to be Lilei's enemy. She dodged the big ghost witch who stretched out his hand to grab her, pleading, I wasn't sent by him to harm you. No way. The big ghost witch didn't listen to her explanation at all. He grabbed her hair and dragged her onto the experimental table like a little sheep. 1 month later, Xiaomoyan received a report from Warden X, explaining the mysterious death of a female prisoner. It is said that her hands and feet were chopped off and replaced with monkey and wild dog limbs respectively. Half of her face was also disfigured, with white bones exposed in several places. When she was found, her body had been bitten by wild beasts, her stomach was filled with stones and weeds, and her lower body was leaking suspicious messy liquid. Xiaomoyan frowned slightly after reading the report. Xiao Mo, "What's wrong?" Mrsya asked, bringing a cup of tea and placing it on his desk. Xiaomoyan's voice was light, "It's okay, it's just a little accident." Although the spell took effect and caused Sutang to suffer bad luck, this bad luck seemed a bit heavier. His original intention was just to make her suffer in prison for the rest of her life. Why? It's only been a month and he's been tortured to death? He overestimated Sutang. That woman, with so little luck and good fortune, dares to fight with her sister? There are really many people in this world who don't know how high the world is. Xiaomoyan picked up the white porcelain teacup and drank the tea calmly. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 987. Chapter 987 The Happiness of the Super Queen. He did not tell his sister about Sutang's death, so Xiaoling knew nothing about it. Autumn has come, and she and Li Lei discussed moving back to the headquarters. In fact, this matter had been on the agenda during their honeymoon trip, but due to various accidents, they have not been able to make the trip so far. Li Lei smiled and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." The two little guys are also very happy. Returning to the headquarters means they will have more playmates and a wider space to play, which is really exciting. Especially Li Rui, whose new itinerary diluted his sadness for Sutang, happily took Xiao Hui to pack their luggage and plan their new room. Even Xiaoling was caught up in their enthusiasm and packed it up together. The family portrait on the wall of the restaurant needs to be taken away, the flower next to the sofa that everyone has grown up with needs to be taken away, the vase that Xiaoling bought from the auction, Mao's favorite cushion, and Mao Tuanzi's cat mint. Every item is full of warm memories. Xiaoling has moved many times before. At first she was very poor and only had some shabby household items, which she threw away when she changed places. Later, she got some money. However, the house was just a cold shelter for her. Every time she moved, except for taking away some clothes and jewelry, all other things were replaced. But this time it's different. This villa carries the family's beautiful memories. She spent a long time packing and choosing, and moved many items that were difficult to part with to her new home. The remaining items were still placed as they were, and she asked the servants who stayed behind to take good care of them in preparation for their return home. Finally it's time to move. The family took Mr. Li on a private plane. As soon as she got on the plane, Xiaoling felt a little uncomfortable, her head felt dizzy and her chest felt tight. She managed to chat with Li Lei and others for a while, but finally couldn't hold on any longer and rested her head on the solid shoulder of the man next to her. "Don't move, I'll squint for a while," she said softly. Li Lei thought she was tired from moving recently, so he didn't care. He asked the servant to get a blanket, wrapped her gently in his arms, and took care of her until she fell asleep. Xiaoling slept for several hours. She woke up once and ate some fruit. She still felt uncomfortable and felt nauseous. Li Lei then felt something was wrong and probed her for it. "Are you sick?" Xiaoling shook her head feebly. "It's okay, it's probably because the plane engine is too noisy." Li Lei felt relieved and laughed at her. "Why didn't I know you were airsick before?" She gave him a weak look, her eyes misty and charming. He kissed her lovingly, put on noise-proof earplugs for her, let her find a more comfortable position in his arms, and fell asleep again. Sleep this time and sleep until arrival. When the plane stopped, Li Lei called her, "Wake up, little pig, we're here." She opened her eyes blearily, her head still a little dizzy, and glanced sideways out the window. Sure enough, it was the tarmac beside the golden beach, with towering coconut trees swaying in the wind. The two children were very happy. As soon as the cabin door opened, they cheered and hurriedly followed the bodyguards and rushed down to play. Li Lei supported Xiaoling and walked slowly. "Be careful where you step." "I'm not that weak," she said inarticulately. Before she could finish her words, she almost missed her footing and stumbled to the side. Xiaoling, Lilei quickly supported her. She had no time to speak, she just felt her stomach churn, and she vomited it out with a loud sound. Holding the handle of the airplane elevator, she vomited for a long time. There was nothing in her stomach, only some acidic water. She was exhausted all over, her beautiful brows were knitted together, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. Lilei was very nervous and sent her to the hospital at the headquarters immediately. Congratulations, young master. After the examination, the doctor came out happily and told Lilei, Madam, she is pregnant. She is 5 weeks old. The baby and mother are both healthy. What? Lilei looked at the doctor in disbelief. Say it again. I said, Madam is pregnant. The doctor smiled, saying that people who become fathers can be stupid. Sure enough, my young master was so happy that he didn't know what to do. Thank you, brother. Lilei's eyes brightened, he grinned widely, patted the doctor's shoulder vigorously, and rushed into the examination room to find Xiaoling. Xiaoling was standing by the window of the examination room. The bright sunshine was shining on her, making her look gentle and beautiful. With a faint smile on her face, she was listening carefully to the doctor's instructions on what to pay attention to during pregnancy. Although she had already heard it when she was pregnant with her first 2 children, it did not prevent her from listening as focused as ever this time. It was the doctor who spotted Lilei first and greeted him with a smile, Master. Xiaoling then turned around and saw him, her brows widened with joy, You're here. Lilei gave her a big hug and was so excited that he couldn't speak incoherently. We have a baby again? It's great, so great. She also put her arms around his waist. Yes, we have another baby. She pressed her cheek against his chest, and a happy and peaceful smile spread on her petal-like lips. After experiencing so many hardships, after finally welcoming happiness, this baby is really the most timely gift from God. This time, I will take good care of you and the baby will be safe. He hugged his most beloved woman and solemnly swore. This time, nothing could hurt her. 10 months later, she gave birth to a healthy and lovely baby girl named Yingluo. Yingluo means beautiful jade, like a pearl or a treasure, like a luo or a poppy. This child is the apple of her and Lilei's eye, a precious treasure that bears witness to their love. The whole family is very fond of this child. Xiaowai and Li Rui, who are already in elementary school, take the initiative to take on the responsibility of protecting their sister. Whenever they have time, they come to play with their infant sister and watch her waving her little hands. Little feet smiled so happily, and the 2 little boys were also very happy, and they agreed to protect their sister for the rest of their lives. Mr. Li often visits his great-granddaughter and brings many delicious and fun things. Over the past few generations of the Li family, all the direct descendants of the family have produced boys, and they have not seen a girl in the past 100 years. Therefore, the old man is extremely fond of this great-granddaughter, and he loves her even more than Xiaohui, his eldest great-grandson. Because of this girl, his relationship with Xiaoling also greatly improved, and the family became more and more harmonious over the long years. Finally, the old man no longer had any prejudice against Xiaoling, and he truly loved his grandson-in-law. As for Xiaoling, all her dreams have come true now. When she has nothing to do, she raises flowers and plants and makes music. She has been in semi-retirement for a long time now, but her reputation as a super diva is even more unattainable and unmatched. Every single she releases becomes popular all over the world, making countless fans crazy about it. She who is the center of the spotlight no longer cares about fame and fortune. What she cares about is her husband, family, and children. During the long and beautiful years, the family supports each other and loves each other. This is the best life. She thought that happiness is all about little things like this. She and her family will live a good life in this life. Ifs, the next chapter will include an extra chapter. The text of the story ends here. Thank you all for your companionship this year. The next chapter, Yahuo, about 10 chapters below, is Chu Chen's extra chapter. When Hua grows old, about 160 chapters below, is Pei Zion Xiaoling's extra chapter. The Palace of Night has been serialized from the beginning to the present with the extra chapters of Xiaoling's daughter and Wei Lingnan. Because the chapter numbers on different terminals are different, I won't report the serial numbers. Please refer to the chapter names to see which extra chapter you like. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 988. Chapter 988, Fire of Industry, extra by Chu Chen. When Chu Chen was very young, his father taught him to be an upright person. At one time, Chu Chen regarded that teaching as a guideline, until one year his father was framed and imprisoned. His father is a surgeon with superb medical skills. He has been practicing for more than 20 years and works in a well-known hospital in his hometown. My father had nothing to do with the world. When other colleagues were fighting for the selection of professors or for opportunities for further study, he was the only one who silently did his job well, often just returning home and not having time to eat. After a few mouthfuls, I was hurried away by an emergency call for surgery. People in the hospital especially like to call Chu Chen's father on duty, because everyone else is busy with salary increases and promotions, but he is the only one who works diligently and down to earth, and even allows others to take credit for his achievements and trample on them. Let him climb to a higher position. Suffering a loss is a blessing, his father said to Chu Chen. So, although he has superb medical skills, he is so unknown. When he was a child, Chu Chen once raised his head and asked his father, "Dad, why don't you tell everyone that Director Zhou's tumor removal surgery, Manager Li's difficult diagnosis, and many, many other things, were all done by you?" The father gently touched his little head. "Son, a doctor's duty is to save lives and heal the wounded. As for fame and wealth, they are all external things. It doesn't matter whether you have them or not." Chu Chen seemed to understand, but not quite. Chu Chen's mother is a nurse. Whenever her father says this, she will look at him tenderly and admiringly, with a peaceful look on her face, and gently say, "Yes, as long as our family of 3 can be safe and happy. When we are together, fame and wealth are not important at all." Their wishes are so plain and simple. So Chu Chen always thought that if there hadn't been that disaster, maybe when he grew up, he would have become an ordinary person like his parents, doing an unknown job that was beneficial to society. "I work hard all day long, but I am satisfied, happy and at peace with a little bit of happiness." Unfortunately, that disaster struck suddenly. At that time, a critically ill patient came to the hospital with a terminal malignant tumor that had spread. However, the family members ignored the doctor's advice and insisted on undergoing surgery. All doctors know that surgery is extremely risky. If you are not careful, it will be self-defeating and hasten the death of the patient. However, in this small town, this family has a good background. In order to establish a relationship with them, the attending doctor took the risk and decided to operate. The attending doctor is not qualified enough to handle such a difficult operation. He asked Chu Chen's father to be the surgeon. But Chu Chen's father knew the risks involved and refused to say anything. He earnestly advised the attending doctor, "This patient has long been unsuitable for surgery. The probability of success is almost zero. It is better to have conservative treatment and hope to live for a few more days. This is the most responsible and safest approach." The attending doctor would not listen. He has already boasted in front of the patient's family that if the operation is terminated at this time, it will not only be a question of whether the patient himself can be saved, but also whether his future will be ruined. He cried and begged Chu Chen's father, and brought many gifts to their house. Chu Chen was still young at that time, and had never seen so many gilded foreign wines, lively seafood, and bright and exquisite watches. He was dazzled by what he saw. Only then did I realize that there are so many good things in the world. He secretly looked at his father with greedy eyes, eager for his father to accept it, but his father always shook his head. The attending doctor knelt down in front of his father and burst into tears. Later, he asked his father one after another, "Dr. Chu, you are the best surgeon in our hospital. If you don't go to the operating table, then I will have to ask Dr. Liu to do the surgery. You know, Dr. Liu's diploma was paid for, and he used to be a veterinarian. He has only performed a few serious operations, let alone such a complicated and difficult operation, and the patient can do it directly. You've been sentenced to death. Can you just bear to watch the patient die miserably on the operating table?" Father was silent for a long time, and finally nodded in agreement. He finally relented, and the attending doctor left with a lot of gratitude. He spent a lot of time preparing for the operation, working day and night, going to the research office to look up information, looking up similar cases abroad, and getting the details of the patient from doctors and nurses. He even frowned while eating. Finally, under the urging of the hospital and family members, I walked onto the operating table. Chu Chen knew that he had tried his best. However, doctors are not gods. Although my father performed 100% and made no mistakes in his operation, the patient still fell into a long coma and did not survive the end of that month. The father was very sad and blamed himself, and said bitterly, "I really regret it. If he had not had to do this operation, he would have been able to survive at least one more month and see his little granddaughter born with his own eyes. But he is just an ordinary surgeon, and there are some things that he cannot stop." For the first time, he felt frustrated. Why was he just a low-level doctor without a professional title? If we had more power, would we be able to prevent tragedies from happening? After the patient died, he remained silent for a long time, burying his head between his arms. The young Chu Chen and his mother were worried about his condition, but they didn't expect that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. The family members of the deceased made a fuss. They blocked the sky in that little-known town and fiercely demanded an explanation from the hospital. The hospital could not withstand the pressure and pushed Chu Chen's father out. Chu Chen's father was shocked. All his operations were precise and perfect. Every surgical step complied with the regulations. He had a clear conscience. How could he be considered responsible for this accident? After all, it should be the responsibility of those decision-makers who insist on operating on patients. But the charges the hospital convicted him of were so ridiculous: surgical errors and medical malpractice. They said that Chu Chen's father had been practicing medicine for many years and had not even been awarded a professor. In order to become a professor as soon as possible, he was so obsessed that he patted his chest and said that he was qualified for this operation, and encouraged the attending doctor to do this. Bad decision to have surgery. Not only that, he also made many mistakes during the operation. It was his poor technique that directly led to the patient's death. My father was not angry and resisted, but he could not argue. The attending doctor, who had cried and knelt at his feet, begging him to take the operation, had already changed his face and looked at him with contempt, in front of his family members and other colleagues in the hospital. "Dr. Chu, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. If you hadn't patted your chest to ensure that the operation would be successful, how could I have dared to agree to such a dangerous operation for the patient's family? I didn't expect you to be so corrupt in medical ethics. It's so disappointing." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Sci-fi. Chapter 989. Chapter 989, Transformation. Chu Chen's father looked at the doctor in shock, realizing for the first time that people could confuse right and wrong to such an extent. The angry family members rushed forward and punched and kicked him, injuring him. Not only that, they took him to court, used their connections to get a harsher sentence, and forcibly extended the original 3-year sentence to a full 10 years. 10 years, how many decades are there in life? On the day of the sentencing, Chu Chen's mother cried until she fainted. 12-year-old Chu Chen panicked and hugged his mother's limp body on the ground, calling her name again and again, then raised his head and begged the uncles and aunts passing by to save her. However, people coming and going were afraid of offending the city's powerful families, and no one offered a helping hand to the mother and son. Originally, director Deng, who would smile at Chu Chen when he went to the hospital to find his father, Aunt Zhao, who once gave him a few candies, and Professor Li, who kindly told him to wear more clothes. Everyone walked away from the mother and child, like avoiding a savage beast. It wasn't until many years later that Chu Chen understood, who would be willing to stand up for a powerless little man. Why bother after thanklessly offending the hospital and those powerful local gangsters? It's a pity that he couldn't figure this out when he was still young. 12-year-old Chu Chen held his mother, who was breathing weakly, in his arms. He felt an unprecedented sense of helplessness and fear. He looked around and saw a man standing on the witness stand through the indifferent crowd, walking in a hurry. Walking down, it was the man who knocked on his door late at night, knelt down in front of his father with expensive gifts and begged, and then bid him back. Chu Chen didn't have much time to worry about. He rushed forward, just as the man knelt down at his father's feet. He also knelt down at the man's feet, crying, "Uncle, please. For the sake of my father helping you, please save me, my mother." The man's expression suddenly changed, and he kicked him away fiercely in the eyes of all the people around him. He cursed angrily, "You little bastard. Don't be so slanderous. When did your dad ever help me? I messed with him. Isn't it enough that you've caused so much trouble? Go as far away as you can." Speaking, he quickly walked out of the court. Chu Chen was kicked so hard that his ribs hurt. He opened his clothes and found that his heart was bruised. He endured the pain and moved back to his mother step by step. He took off all the clothes on his body and kept her warm according to some first aid knowledge his parents taught him. Mother woke up leisurely, took his hand, and took him home in a daze. While crossing the road, a truck sped by. Chu Chen watched helplessly as the truck crashed into her, and her skinny and thin body flew backwards far and wide, with blood splattering everywhere. Pedestrians screamed and fled, forming the most ferocious slow motion in the world. Her legs could not be saved and she was paraplegic at a high level. Following this are malnutrition, decreased immunity, and wound infection. 12-year-old Chu Chen ran around to raise money for her medical expenses. You could still borrow some money at first, but after a few times, no one was willing to put money into this bottomless pit. The uncles and aunts who were once so friendly to him now avoid him like the plague. Until many years later in his nightmares, Chu Chen often dreamed of going to the home of a relative who was doing small business. He was wearing a pair of old clothes, his head lowered awkwardly, standing in the beautifully decorated living room, surrounded by relatives and friends. During the meal, a beautiful little girl in a pink dress entertained the pet dog with meat bones. The aroma of food wafted into his nose. He was hungry and his stomach growled. No one paid any attention to him. He himself blushed with embarrassment and wished he could dig a crack in the ground and burrow down. From childhood, although his parents could not give him a wealthy life, they still taught him how to be a decent person. At the moment when his stomach growled, he felt that he had been humiliated by his family. Suppressing the embarrassment, he lowered his head and said, "Second uncle, please lend me some money. When I grow up and find a job, I will definitely pay it back to you with interest." "Definitely." The second uncle responded with a disdainful sneer. "The little brother is so pitiful, give him something to eat." At the dining table under the crystal lamp, the little girl in a pink dress held a funny dog bone and handed it to him innocently. The girl's mother clapped her hand and scolded her, "Eat well, if you don't obey me, you will become a little beggar like this in the future." Chuchen didn't know how he got out of their house. The door of the house closed behind him. He was empty-handed and hungry. He looked at the cold moon outside the window and swore to himself that he would definitely look like a human being. "I will never ask for help again." He dropped out of school and worked several jobs a day, soliciting customers at the train station, helping people put up small advertisements, washing dishes for small restaurants, and handling leftovers. He tried his best and relied on his own blood and sweat to raise the expenses for his mother's later treatment. Although it is still a drop in the bucket, it is better than nothing. On the day he was discharged from the hospital, he pushed his crude wheelchair that he pieced together from a garbage dump and took his mother back to his musty-smelling home. He hugged his mother's frail and rickety body and cried silently. Then, I raised my head and told myself that I would never shed tears again in this life. His father wanted him to become an upright person. However, this year, 12-year-old Chuchen understood one thing: all justice is pale and powerless in the face of power. The turning point of fate came in the winter 2 years later. Heavy snow engulfed the entire town. While Chuchen was working in a restaurant, someone called and ordered more than 20 takeaway lunch boxes. It was a snowy day and the road was long, so no one was willing to deliver. The little boss was helpless and had no choice but to promise that if anyone was willing to go, he would be able to bring home 2 more lunch boxes with a lot of meat today. Still no one wants to. Only Chuchen, thinking of his mother who was ill in bed, gritted his teeth and went on. He braved the wind and snow to deliver the lunch box to the place. It was a film crew shooting snow scenes in a remote corner of the countryside. It was freezing cold, and everyone was extremely cold. When they saw the hot lunch boxes, they gathered around and praised him while eating. "You're a good boy. You're delivering lunch boxes in such a cold day. It's the conscience of the industry, well done," he said, patting him on the shoulder appreciatively. Chuchen said a few words of humility, took the money from the studio assistant, counted it carefully, and was about to leave. But he was stopped by the assistant director who hurried over. "Young man, wait, please help me. Look at the weather, many extras are absent, but what kind of quality are they? There are not enough extras on the set, can you help us?" End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Sci-fi. Chapter 990. Chapter 990 Ambition. Me, Chuchen was surprised. "Yes," the assistant director said, "if you don't have any lines, just show your movements and show your face a few times. Your body shape is just right," as he said. He put a performance costume into his hand, along with he handed over the change and said, "This is your tip for delivering food. Don't go back today. When we finish our work here, we will still have extra money for you." Chuchen lowered his head and glanced at the change in his hand and said, "Okay." For money, he was willing to do anything. From the day something happened to his family, he vowed to support the family again. One day, he would no longer have to beg for help and be looked down upon, and no longer have to sell his goods and suffer from hunger. He worked hard to play this popular role well. The wind and snow were so strong that everyone could not stand the cold. Only Chuchen sprinted when he was told to sprint and lay down when he was told to lie down without hesitation. He lay motionless in the cold snow for several minutes, pretending to be a corpse, and when someone stepped on him, he controlled himself not to change even the slightest expression. At the end of the day, my limbs were all frostbitten. The assistant director took the medicine and sent it to him along with the money. "Well done, young man. Will you come again tomorrow?" Chuchen looked down at a bright red $100 bill in his hand and said without hesitation, "Come on." He worked with the crew for a full week and earned 700 yuan. He took the money and ran to shopping malls across the city to buy a wheelchair for his mother. When he carefully held his mother and sat on it, pushing her outside for a walk to bask in the sun, she held his hand and cried, "Son, I'm sorry for you." The disabled woman burst into tears. Chu Chen knelt down and wiped away her tears bit by bit. He still remembers that when he was still in school, his teacher often said that when God closes a door for people, he will open a window elsewhere. He still comforts his mother in this way now, but he never expected what God would open for him. A rugged yet glorious window. That experience as an extra made Chu Chen realize that making money in this business is much faster than washing dishes in a restaurant. He quit his job in the restaurant and found a place among the many extras in the suburban film and television city. The film and television city was far away from his home. Often when it was dark, he would go out and cross half of the city to look for opportunities there. After finishing work, I would spend another 3 or 4 hours rushing home to boil water, cook, and wash my mother's feet. Occasionally, when he looks in the mirror, he no longer recognizes himself in the mirror. Comparing the photos from my student days, those carefree years seem like a world away. His mother felt very sorry for him and always cried secretly alone, thinking that he would not notice. Little did she know that those wet pillow covers and red and swollen eye circles had already given her away. Her tears made Chu Chen feel heartbroken and guilty. If he had been more useful and powerful, she wouldn't have to be so sad. Chu Chen worked from dawn to dusk in the film and television city, observing and studying. He is not willing to be an extra all his life, and is determined to learn more and climb higher, so that one day, his mother can live a prosperous life and his father can be avenged. He wants to trample under his feet one by one all those who have trampled on their home. Opportunity awaits those who are prepared. At that time, he followed a martial arts film crew. The crew used a script writer who had just graduated from college. He had a bachelor's degree and had no experience. He acted in a panic and made many mistakes, which made everyone complain. The director was also angry, and scolded him all over the place. The clerk cried, and on the spot said he was quitting the job, threw up his sleeves, and walked away. The director was so angry that he jumped up and down, but there was nothing he could do. Chu Chen watched the excitement for a while, walked out of the crowd and walked to the director. "Let me give it a try." The director looked at him suspiciously. Chu Chen reported some data to him, including the mistakes he made in the short scene notes just now, including which props should be connected to which scene, which item in which episode can be eliminated, and which one line needs to be retaken. It was all clearly stated. The director's eyes lit up, and he was very surprised. "You are an extra, but you still pay attention to these things. Success or failure depends on this one move." Chu Chen looked directly into his eyes, trying hard to hide the trembling from excitement and nervousness in his voice, and told the director, "I don't want to be an extra for the rest of my life." The director looked at him deeply and smiled. "Okay, I'll give you a chance. This opportunity is not easy to do. It is much harder and more stressful than being an extra." Chu Chen gritted his teeth and resisted. He was busy until late at night every day. He was the last one to finish work and the first one to start work the next day. He would often only sleep for 2 or 3 hours before getting up in a hurry and continuing to work, drinking one cup after another of refreshing strong tea. Drink. Fortunately, all the hard work is worth it. When the film was finished, the director patted him on the shoulder. "You're a good young man. Please follow me from now on." Chu Chen was overjoyed. However, he couldn't take care of his family when he was filming all over the world with the crew. After much consideration, he decided to sell the family house, sublet a small apartment, and use the remaining money to hire a part-time worker to take care of her after discussing with his mother. On the day he sold the house, he was carrying large bags and pushing his mother's wheelchair. He turned his head and took one last look at the place where he was born and grew up. He secretly swore in his heart that one day, he would buy this place back, one day. He has been a scene recorder for more than 2 years. He is smart and able to endure hardships, and is highly appreciated by the director. The director cultivated him carefully and took him with him wherever he went. Gradually, he became famous. The director took over a film from Emperor, which is a key project and requires a lot of investment. In the middle of filming, something unexpected happened. The heroine suddenly announced her withdrawal and would rather pay a high penalty than continue filming. No matter how hard the director and producer tried to coerce and induce her, it was of no use. The crew is in chaos. If the heroine is replaced, it means that most of the previously shot scenes will be scrapped and have to be started all over again. As a result, it will not be able to catch up with the prime time period in the second year and the awards. Chatting during the break, the director smiled bitterly. It's not our fault. The emperor is fighting among himself, which brings disaster to the pond. Chuchin instinctively caught something and pestered him for details. The director then told him that the old and new forces of the Emperor Pei family were alternating, and the head of the family was seriously ill. The heir, Pei Xian, was ordered to take over the Emperor Entertainment in a critical moment to prepare for the official succession in the near future. However, Pei Xian was still young, and some of his meritorious old ministers were dissatisfied with his brothers and secretly interfered with him, making his path to the throne full of obstacles. This film was secretly blocked from filming smoothly. Once such a large-scale production suffers losses, the veterans can question Pei Xian's ability and then launch attacks. Chu Chen found information and checked this person. Very young, almost 16 years old, but he has already done several major things that shocked the business world. His methods are tyrannical and more decisive and ruthless than many adults. Looking at his press conferences and graphic interviews, it is clear that he has a mature demeanor. He already has an imperial demeanor as a fledgling, with deep thoughts, indistinguishable joy and anger, and unpredictable eyes. End of this chapter.